Welcome to MRE Uncut, where we'll give you real and practical insights into the real estate scene in Melbourne. We'll discuss what's happening in the industry, all backed by MRE's history of over 30 years in the game. With that said, let's jump into this week's episode of MRE Uncut.
Welcome to another MRE podcast. My name's Stephen Fitzsimon. I'm here with the well-known Peter Hooymans.
Steve-o, everybody.
And introducing a couple of the business development managers at MRE. We've got Kelly Levin.
Hi, everyone.
And Annie Gillan.
Hello.
Today we wanted to have a little chat to you all about the minimum standards for renting, which were introduced back in 2021, and the impact that that's had on the market and the landlords that we're dealing with, and how it's seen across the industry, because we're seeing some gaps. Annie, you come sort of face to face with a lot of landlords that you're introducing our services to them. Are they all across the minimum standards and what they signify?
I think it varies whether they've heard about it and to what extent. Most of the time not, but often they've heard certain bits and pieces, but not even to the extent that we would go to with it. I think it really varies what different agencies are telling different owners to get listings or to keep listings, whatever it may be, but very rarely it's already known before we walk in the door.
Sorry, I need to jump in.
Of course.
So you're saying that when you're talking to owners who might want to move their property, the agent isn't telling them the truth about the minimum standards that's law?
Exactly. It's not that they're not telling them the truth. I feel like they don't even know sometimes.
They're not telling them at all?
Yeah, at all.
Do you think they're omitting it though?
Potentially.
Yeah,
to keep costs down, maybe.
Sorry, we're not.
Yeah.
Because that's pretty substantial.
It's a big deal, absolutely, especially with all the fines and everything that are involved.
Yeah, wow. So we've got agents that won't tell the landlords what they're up for.
Yeah.
So they don't know.
Yeah.
Because let's say, for example, this month, February, you've listed 10. I know it's small, but let's just say it. How many of those do you reckon would know about minimum standards?
Yeah, interesting month.
Just a rough guess, you know.
Well, I've had half that are takeovers and half that are new listings to go online, and I reckon there'd be no more than 3 that were aware to it, to the extent when they're getting our forms to tick off that they're aware of it as well. They're questioning what they're signing off on. Yeah.
Only.
I'd say so.
What are the sorry,
No, go.
But because I'm
fascinated.
Really curious. Well, I am. But what about the other 70%? What's their reaction? Because it's not like it's a one-page checklist.
Yeah.
This is 100 and how many?
The legislation.
How many items is on the list?
Oh, no, there's not that many. That's the legislation. The minimum standards is like 12 items, 13 items or something that need to be covered off on. But they're extensive.
They're
big items.
And they're expensive.
Yeah.
So 70% don't know.
I'd say so. Mm. And they're big changes to properties. It's not just painting a wall if it needs painting.
Have you got a recent story of a real, like a thumper?
I find the most occurring, and of course recent, is with blinds. So many apartments, houses don't have blinds in the living rooms, which a lot of people don't feel the need to have them, but they're non-compliant. So that's what we've been doing the most of.
Mm-hmm. They're not just blinds. They've got to be blockout blinds that provide privacy and darkness.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. I like the darkness bit. Yeah. It's always good on a Sunday morning.
I understand.
In the living room though?
Oh, I don't know. Well, let's say you sleep on the couch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it suits your habitat, I think.
I don't know.
But like it's fascinating that you could have a townhouse that has a ground floor living room that overlooks a courtyard that has high walls, nobody can look in, and you've got beautiful sheer curtains that would have cost thousands of dollars, yet you've still got to go to the extent then of putting in block-out blinds if you want to meet the minimum standards.
Or the windows are the feature of that living room and you're blocking them off with some cheap roller blinds just to get it compliant.
Have you got a story, Cal? Like when I like blinds up, but have you got like a profound story of a person that's had to do some extraordinary, I don't know, renovation or update or upgrade?
I don't know profound, but I have found since I've started every single takeover, I don't think one of them have had everything ticked off, disclosure statements, blinds, heating, all this sort of stuff.
Yes.
You take it over and it's, for us, it's mandatory, it's basic, all of our properties meet these standards and you take them over and it's just not being done by other agents. So not one time have I taken over a property where everything's all good to go. There's always stuff missing.
So not one time.
No.
We haven't had one. We're still going. I
haven't
don't think
seen
we've
one.
had one
Yeah.
since the start. We started looking at it the start of 2023 and we still haven't had one.
I think what the catch is, if you're looking for something that seems profound, is skylights. Having to install little 15 centimetre blinds on little skylights that are in living room ceilings because they're part of the light feature of the property. That's been tricky. And finding a trade that will do it as well.
I don't know what that is. Sorry, explain.
So you've got a living room, say there's windows, it's a cinema room, whatever it is, windows
Yes.
surrounding the property, but then there's little skylights that are literally 15 centimetres high.
Yeah.
You're getting someone out to install blinds
Oh, right.
just to cover the rooftop. When the purpose of it is to let light into the property.
Wow. So what's the thinking behind that, Steve?
Well, it doesn't meet minimum standards for darkness. The living room. That's the legislation.
Right.
So it's ridiculous, but that's the
So
rules.
blinds is a big one. What else? What are the other?
I think the most costly one that we see now are all of the apartments that previously had an electric heater on the wall in the lounge
Like
room.
the little white panel
Yeah,
type jobs from Bunnings that you plug in,
correct.
$200.
Mount them on the wall.
Do the job, suck a
Do
heap
the
of
job, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a
Do-
small room.
Do the job, but
Yeah.
use a lot of electricity.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what's the deal with them?
They're not permitted at all now
Why?
because they don't have a 2-star energy rating,
Yeah, which is probably right.
which is probably right.
Yeah.
But the challenge then is
What do?
you've got to put in a split system basically. 'Cause
And
you're not gonna be able to
remove
run-
whatever
So how do you
is
put
there.
a split system on level 64 of EQ Tower?
Well, in EQT you've got aircon already, so it's not so much of a problem. But there are some practical rules around it. If it's a heritage listed building, or the owners' corporation say no, you can't, or it really, really expensive to install far and above and beyond a normal installation, then you don't have to do it, and you then have to provide the old electric heater. But for the vast majority of 1960s apartments that have been built, one, it isn't very expensive to do above
okay.
and beyond the cost, and you've got to put a split system in. But we still see them. If you go on to realestate.com now, you'll look for that type of apartment. You'll see heaps that don't have air conditioning units, and they don't have a gas heater, and so they're not compliant. But they're advertised.
What
and
else?
They're there.
Keys. I reckon keys is the other big one. How many older homes that we go and see have a key for
So
every
what's the
single...
rule?
So you have to have a key for every single lock in the property.
Yep.
Even if it's a window, if there's no latch or anything, you've got to put a lock in place. A lot of the time you're going to have to replace that window.
Hang on. So keys and locks. So you're saying that parts of the property have got to have a lock.
Yeah, you got to have a deadlock on the front door. Any external door's
Yeah,
got to have a deadlock.
that's fine.
And you have to have window locks.
You've got to have window locks, which
Latches.
That's
Latches,
fine.
yeah.
The
Depending
catch
on
is where you don't have the key for the lock.
Yeah, because
And
the
the-
last tenant lost it.
Yeah.
So
So
then
you
you
can
got to
still
replace the
latch it.
lock.
Yeah.
The
Or
lock
cut the
because
key.
it's so old that you can't just cut
or
a new
you've got
key
your
for it.
locksmith
Yeah.
to replace.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
previous tenants lost the key.
Yeah.
Or
For
the
260
kids pulled it
bucks,
out
you
and
could
put
do
it down the toilet. Like
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
my son used to do that.
It's not
Well,
in
your
the bottom
CD
drawer
player, didn't
anymore.
you? No, CD
yeah,
player.
put him in the CD player in the car.
Yeah.
That's a true story.
Really?
Yeah. My stereo blew up, and I took it and he said, "Well, mate,
There was a key
you
in
better
there.
come and look at full of keys." Mate, he'd been pushing keys in the CD. Yeah, that was great.
You see how many can go
And
in.
20 cent pieces.
Oh my gosh.
Just
Anyway,
fantastic.
We digress.
Gold
So,
bar.
so we've got windows, keys, heaters. What
Yeah.
else?
Another one that's hitting a lot of people, and there's a lot of talk at the moment, is the mold and dampness. It's a really difficult one for owners because it is non-compliant if there is any mold or damp that is caused by or related to the building structure. So you could have, and we've seen this, over tenancies in the same apartment. You can have some tenants that open the windows, air places out, and don't suffer any mold. Then a new tenant moves in, but they don't open the windows, so therefore you get mold. Now,
So-
that's not the structure of the property that has caused the mold.
Yeah.
But if you've got dampness that might be rising damp, you've got dampness that's coming in through a slow water leak, anything like this. If you get mold in the property, it's a massive no-no. And then if mold comes along, you've then got to investigate it to find out whether or not it is the tenant's behaviour or the building structure.
So is there a mold detective?
Yeah, there is. He's called the mold doctor.
So you call the mold doctor.
Correct. He goes out. Do you reckon he's going to say that you've got to spend $1,000 to
Has he
fix
got a
it?
stethoscope?
Every time.
Of course he does. Yeah.
He goes out
He's
and
dressed in a
fixes
white
it.
skirt. Like,
Do you know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
it's
the
a
mold
business.
doctor.
Yeah,
So that's just a new industry that's popped up out of nowhere.
overnight.
A bit
It's
like
another good
detector
one.
inspector.
Yeah, a bit like that. Yeah.
Fantastic. Why
Yeah.
didn't we get into the mold doctor business, mate?
Oh, mate, I don't
It's not
think
too late.
Yeah, it isn't too late.
I feel like there's
'cause I'm
definitely still an
it's just
opening.
starting.
I'm tipping.
Yeah.
I'm tipping. I'm just going to have a rough shoot in the dark here.
Yeah.
I'm tipping. The mold doctor's so busy we can't get him.
Yeah, well, I think I don't know the level of.
I'm not having a go at him, mold.
No.
I'm just saying.
And
I'm imagining
all the
he's
mold,
very busy.
All the mold industry overall, we love them, by the way, and please do our work when we need you. But the
Mold doctor.
Mold doctor. Yeah, use mold doctor. Molddoctor.com.au.
Is that his actual web address?
Probably.
Okay. But now we definitely won't get him because everyone's going to use him.
Yeah, we're stuffed.
Okay. So
but
there is a mold person.
Oh, look, and it's a significant issue across a multitude of properties. But it's another one of these things that I think if we want to revert this back to then the rental crisis, there's a lot of owners. I know of 2 instances where we've had owners that have literally gone, do you know what? Too hard. I'm selling, because they've got to get dehumidifiers put into properties, not because of the fact that there's something wrong with their property, but because that tenant was a problem. So it's an extra expense that they've got. Then that tenant takes them to VCAT. They have big argument and hissy fit about whose fault it is. How do you justify it? So it's all too hard, mate. I'm out of here.
I think that's the catch, though. You have to have sufficient ventilation in a property, but there's no rules on what ventilation is in a property
That's
or a
it.
bathroom.
I'm just thinking as well, can you imagine if this was a rule in Queensland?
Yeah.
Like 6 months of the year, it's
Yeah.
70% humidity.
Yeah.
It's like
And warm.
Good luck.
Yeah.
So, and we've had really humid weather this summer in Melbourne.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of advantage. What else we got on there that makes our landlord's life a little tougher and our tenants' life a little tougher?
Yeah, well, I think if you look at it,
Not to mention our poor BDMs.
yeah. So the bits that we look at, lighting is another one that
What's the rule say?
well, you've got to have light sources. You can't have any dark rooms effectively in a building. Older style properties, they're quite often they've got a little sort of study area and it didn't have lighting in it. It's got, and so now it needs to have
It's
lighting.
probably fair enough.
Oh yeah, a lot of them are fair enough.
Yeah.
But the big ones that we're sort of looking for in operationally that people aren't aware of come back to your safety issues, your access issues in terms of your keys. We don't suffer too much on things like vermin-proof bins, which they now say that you need to have. These don't interest us too much. Older properties, you need to have hot and cold water in the laundry now, as opposed to just some of them just had the old cold water tap.
What
there's
about the
stuff?
electrical wiring
Yep,
issue?
it's a significant.
Because I've got some friends who have got rental property in eastern suburbs, like Surrey Hills type area. That's of Melbourne, and they had like a period style home that had the old electrical wire that had a cloth conduit on it.
Oh yeah, that's no good.
No, so the story from them was the whole house had to be rewired,
Correct. Yep.
which was I think it was something like $40,000.
Yeah.
Have we had any of those?
I don't think we've had them, but I've had another agent that spoke to me about their experience.
Yeah.
And they had a bunch of them where they had the switchboards that weren't the correct.
so
We've had the dodgy switchboards, absolutely.
Yeah.
You don't have the safety switch. We've
So
had
the
to
owner in
replace
that
them.
case,
They're $3.5
they
grand.
just sold.
Yeah,
They just said it was too hard.
yeah. Leave it to the
What's
next
the
person.
rule on that?
Well, you've got to have the safety switchboard on the property.
Which came in when?
2021.
No,
for
but
March.
when were safety switches first put in?
Years
20 years ago?
Yeah, I reckon.
So anything pre-2000 roughly
Yeah.
has to have a switchboard upgrade,
Yes.
roughly. And what's a
Roughly.
switchboard upgrade? Do we have a switchboard upgrade doctor?
No, they're called an electrician. But yeah,
I call
Detector
it
inspector.
I call it a Sparky.
Yeah, it depends on the actual property and how far it's got to be run, the wires and so forth. But I've seen them come in thousands. Yeah, thousands.
I'd say that causes a lot more kickback than the minimum standards does. You don't find out the costs of those works until you've done the checks as well. So you've committed to the rental by that point. You might have a tenant in place and then they're finding out what they've got to do.
The owner or the tenant?
Owner. Well, the compliance checks for gas, electrical and smoke alarms are now only done once a tenant's moved in.
Right.
So you can be up for a big bill after that.
So I think the challenge with the rental minimum standards is the consequences of owners not complying with them and then having a knowledgeable tenant. So if we look now at what's going on in the marketplace, if a tenant signs up to a property and then turns up and picks up the key and then goes down there and walks in and goes, oh, this doesn't meet minimum standards. If they've changed their mind, if they've sort of cooled off from their idea of renting that property, they can literally go back to the office, give the agent the key and say, sorry, I'm not taking this property anymore because the blinds are not block-out blinds or the heater on the wall is not the correct heater. And they can walk away and there's no penalty to them. The alternative is they move in and then they can ask for that to be rectified, whatever the problem is, as an urgent repair, which means it needs to be acted on within 24 hours. Now, if we're talking about getting blinds in across their living room, I'm telling you it's likely to be 2 weeks before they have any chance of getting those blinds done. And, they can seek compensation for that. There's additional...
Do they?
Yeah. If they're knowledgeable, of course.
And so that free rent, what is it?
Yeah, it would be a percentage of the rent. If it's in the lounge room and they can't use the lounge room, it's a
for the period of time.
Exactly. They feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And
using
tenants
the
are
lounge room.
really clued up. They know exactly what's going on out there. So
You've only got to
you
Google
wouldn't
it.
want to Google it.
Social
Like
media.
you wouldn't want to risk it. Like it's in the forefront.
So, question, we've got a landlord who wants to give us the business but is pushing back on some of these things. What do you do?
Can't bring it on.
Yeah, and the onus falls on them as
So we
well.
don't. So even though the onus falls on them, we don't take it.
Well, it happens. They just won't go with us because we'll tell them that they have to do it for us to proceed
Yeah.
with the
So it's
campaign.
same thing though. We
Pick a
don't take the
different
business.
agency. Yeah.
Because
But
it's not
we
because it's
lose the
non-compliant.
Yeah.
It's not like they do it and then choose another agency. They just don't do it.
Looks
and,
like we're just
and
throwing
use another
invoices
agency.
on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is I sort of get. You would get some that think it's. I mean, the legislation's pretty hard. I mean, we had a bit of a rant about the government making
Wasn't the
rentals
first.
rental price
That's a shock.
rental prices extraordinary. This is like the pinnacle of it.
Yeah. And people are opting currently. Like I've had clients I've said to them, look, this doesn't meet the minimum standards for renting. And they're like, oh, well, I'll have to Airbnb it. So if you've got a dodgy switchboard, you can Airbnb it.
Yeah, right. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Or go with another agency.
Or go with another agency, yeah.
Who doesn't
Who doesn't
care?
Who doesn't check it?
Which I think there's plenty of.
Plenty. Look on
Yeah.
the listings online.
Yeah,
Every
plenty,
listing you can
plenty
point
of
something
agents
out.
who don't
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
It's literally that bad at the moment that you can just go online and go, oh, you can't rent that. It doesn't meet minimum standards.
Yeah.
And they talk about how it's got an electric heater on the side of it. It's in the same building that we've got an apartment where we've put an air conditioner in 3 weeks before.
Which I find they're fascinated when you tell them they'll be all ears, but as soon as you send the invoice to get it done,
Yeah.
never hear from them again.
Yeah, they're not so
They're
keen then.
gone.
Yeah. Okay.
Owners also now have to fill out something called a disclosure statement that you actually have to provide with the lease agreement. So it's a legal document that specifies that the property meets minimum standards, that it's compliant. There's a few other yes or no questions on there. So it's another one when we're having takeovers. I think Annie had one the other day. I heard her on the phone talking about a disclosure statement, and it sounded like the owner had no idea
No.
what it was. And this, it would have been a takeover. The renter's in there and this hasn't been done, which is insane.
But you get the feedback. You've got a poor owner that lives interstate or internationally, has never been in the property that they've bought as an investment. And you're
Heaps of
asking,
those.
Yeah, heaps of them. And
Thousands.
you're asking them to sign a document saying that their property meets minimum standards and it meets the standard for ventilation because it must have adequate ventilation in all habitable rooms. How on earth are they going to know whether
And they
or not
don't
it
know,
meets?
and we can't do it for them.
No, because we can't sign off saying
Yeah.
that's not going to work.
Do we have a ventilation doctor?
Yeah, we do.
We do actually.
What's he called? Dr. Vent?
No, we use a firm at the moment called Property Compliance Victoria, and
Okay.
they
They're
go
ruthless.
out and assess the property as to whether or not it meets all these minimum standards.
Right.
But-
So you said they're ruthless?
That's how I found out about my skylights. I thought it'd be fine.
Ruthless as in compliant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, that's good.
What we're getting them for, it's the job they're providing.
Yeah,
their
yeah, yeah.
report.
So that's good. That's
They're very thorough.
yeah,
Yeah.
thorough's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thorough is good. But the journey, if you look at ventilation, I think, and this is where it's farcical, the whole system. If you look at ventilation, it's got to be properly ventilated, right? But what does that mean?
What does that mean?
Bingo.
Yeah.
And then second to that, tenants are now allowed under the new legislation to take action without asking the owner to block up drafts. So if you've got a drafty kitchen because there's in the old 1950s buildings, they've got the vents in the brickwork to allow through the airflow. Well, that was designed so that the airflow would continue even if you had the heater going in there. Now you can block them, right?
And those properties often don't have the fans in the bathrooms. and-
all of this, they can block that
And
up
then the mould
because
starts to
and then the
grow.
mold starts to grow, and they don't meet the ventilation guidelines.
So
So,
Yeah.
you know,
You got the vent doctor and the mold doctor
yeah,
at the same time.
yeah, arguing,
together.
yeah, take
In
out that, but I don't
Queensland.
want to. Yeah, no, there's
What else is on the list there that stands out as a challenge for us at the moment?
Well, it really, I think a lot of the stuff that's here relates to things that we want and recommend as being improvements to the standards of renting. This is not a gripe session about the fact that there are minimum standards. I think they all make sense and should exist. The problem is that, one, they haven't been communicated to owners, so there's been no public information about the owners. Otherwise, these 7 out of 10 or more clients would have heard about how their properties now need to meet the minimum standards and what those minimum standards are. The government hasn't educated.
But there's no policing either,
No.
like literally zero. So if you're owner and you didn't do it,
Yep.
it's up to the tenant.
It's up to the tenant.
yeah, which we're finding are more. The renters are definitely more vigilant in knowing their rights.
But there's Instagram, there's TikTok pages about
Yeah,
people
yeah.
going out to properties and showing everything that's non-compliant. People are becoming aware of it. It's not
Yeah.
easy to hide anymore.
Yeah.
There's a couple of Instagram pages literally dedicated to
Yeah.
laying out agents that aren't doing the right thing, and they've got
Yeah.
they're hundreds of thousands of followers, so everyone's across it.
Yeah. Well, I bet we're not on it.
No.
The owners aren't either. It's just the tenants.
Yeah.
But on the flip side to that, I look at it and I say that those people that are less educated or
When you mean less educated, you don't mean year 10. You mean they
I
don't
mean,
know their rights.
they don't know their rights.
Yeah.
They've just arrived in the country. Their
Yeah.
English is second language.
Yeah.
Right. Then they might not have a high, socioeconomic capacity to pay rent, and they're going into these cheaper properties that don't comply, not knowing, and they're still getting taken advantage of because there's no policing.
Yeah.
Like if you sit there and you go, well, all we've got to do is look on the ads online, and we can tell that the property isn't compliant for this reason, this reason, and this reason. Yet nobody does anything about it, and the poor tenant who doesn't know their rights, especially in a rental crisis, is just so happy to get a rental property. It's a recipe for disaster.
But then it backfires. The tenant might move out of a property because something that's non-compliant is annoying them when they've got every right to get it fixed, but the agency's not letting them know or standing up for them.
So it's a battle. So we've got some work to do in terms of education for owners. We've got some work to do as agents to continue the push to get our landlords to ensure that the properties are compliant. And we've got some education also to do with the staff in our agencies. I think you girls have got some training tomorrow morning in terms of compliance and so forth. That level of education is abundant at MRE, but I think that there are gaps that exist in we're seeing that from the 7 out of 10 that don't know the rules that we're seeing at the moment. So there's a bit of work to be done on minimum standards, and we hope to see some improvement in the future. So thanks for participating today, guys.
Good summary.
We'll sign off and look forward to our next chat shortly.
See you later.
Thank you.
See you later.